everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm thrilled you can join us today. We're going to be talking about dementia care. Is it different over in Malaysia than where you live? Our guest today lives in Malaysia. She's going to share her story with us about caring for a loved one. Now, if you are new to Alzheimer Speaks, you might not know what all we do here and why we do it. Bottom line, my own mother had dementia for 30 years. And so that's what made me step into this. I wanted to bring people services, products, and tools and connect them to others that are going through the same thing, that have brilliant resources. And so, maybe you could be our next guest. We interview people who are living with dementia, family members, a variety of businesses, researchers, advocates, children, authors, movie directors, you name it. We want to talk to you because that's how we make sustainable change, by being inclusive of all. So if you're interested, reach out to me at radio@alzheimerspeaks.com. Now, before I introduce our guests, I'm going to do a couple of shout outs. One is, please check out alzheimerspeaks.com. We've updated the site. It's very easy to maneuver. In fact, we have one full section dedicated to free educational resources, and there's a big variety there, from Dementia in the Arts and Dementia Chats and the radio show to Dementia Quick Tips, information on memory cafes, dementia-friendly communities, and then, of course, Dementia Map. You can also access from there, or you can go directly to dementiamap.com, which has been a dream of mine for almost 40 years. And that is a global resource directory that also has a calendar of events. We've got like 150 categories that you can search in a variety of different ways, wonderful blog articles, and so much more. And then, again, back on alzheimerspeaks.com, I just released with Scott Carlson my keynote speech in book form, and it's a children's book called Betty the Bald Chicken. And I am just so thrilled with how that turned out and the feedback we've been getting. So please feel free to go to alzheimerspeaks.com/book, and you can get information on how to order that if you'd like. We are going to hear from the Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner, and we will be right back.
I love the footbar walker, and let me tell you why. It is the option for my toolbox that I've been waiting for. Let's be honest, there are some clients who, despite our best rehab efforts, just aren't able to return to performing a sit-to-stand transfer on their own. Now I can offer my caregivers an easier, safer option that doesn't involve hoisting their loved one up from a sitting position. I don't recommend this walker for all of my clients, but I do recommend this walker for those caregivers looking for an easier, safer option with transfers. I would also encourage other therapists to add this walker to their toolbox. It's kind of like having my own mobile parallel bars for the client to pull up on. Whether it's a family caregiver at home helping a loved one with Parkinson's or dementia, CNAs in a long-term care facility assisting their patients, or therapists adapting to client and caregiver-specific needs, we now have a very safe and effective option to offer in the footbar walker. Check this product out at thefootbarwalker.com. That's it for today from Adaptive Equipment and Caregiving Corner. Have a great day, and don't forget, if you can't do it, adapt it.
Okay, we are back, and we are going to learn about dementia care over in Malaysia. And today I'm going to be talking with Sharifah Tahir. Like I said, she lives in Malaysia. She's a full-time care partner by choice since 2014. She is now using not only her personal experience, but she's been trained through Teepa Snow's Positive Approach to Care. And she is certified in that in order to support others as well. So she's a powerful dementia advocate. She focuses on empowerment, meaningful engagements with persons with a lived experience as a right. And she also is addressing dementia from a social disability model. So I really, really am interested in hearing about that. Well, Sharifah, I am so excited to have you on the show today. So thank you for being up late. I know it's past 10 o'clock your time over in Malaysia. So I really appreciate, these time differences and working together on that. I'm thrilled to have you on the show and learn about your model of care and, how things are going over there, because every country, every city, is a little bit different. So thank you.
Well, Lori, thank you for this opportunity. I feel really honored to be on your show. And I'd love to thank you for the work that you do. It's just amazing. So thank you again.
Oh, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mom. So good things come out of bad things. And it just depends on how you want to work with them. I always start out by asking if you have personally been touched by dementia in your own family and circle of friends, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. I think my first contact with dementia when I was doing undergraduate studies in California, during the summer holidays, I worked for a lovely lady in, older age, in San Francisco. And I was hired to clean her apartment. Mm-hmm. But when I got there, she asked me to do things that I thought, well, you're not paying me for doing that. Just sitting with her, showing photos, and the stories change all the time. And she would say peculiar things to me. And I thought, oh, that's kind of strange. Something is off here. I did psychology for my undergraduate. Mm-hmm. So in one of the modules in the program, it touched on dementia. Then the light bulb went off, like, oh, okay, now I know. That's, that explains the lady's behavior. So because of that, that's level of awareness that I had, I was alert to the uncharacteristic changes in my mother. Mm-hmm. And this was in 2013, 2014. And my sister and I pushed for assessment and test. And she was diagnosed in 2014. And it was in the early stages when she was diagnosed, which, was brilliant for that diagnosis. Not that the diagnosis is brilliant, but the fact that it was an early diagnosis. So yeah, that connection personally with my mother. And that was the time when I made the voluntary decision to be her care partner. And this relates back to the time when I was working in the US. In 2004, she and my sister and her family came to visit me in Arlington, Virginia. And that was when the 2004 big tsunami happened.
Okay. Wow.
A couple of weeks later, they left and I was left alone thinking, oh my gosh, your loved ones can be taken away from you just like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, what am I doing so far away in the US? I mean, I can work closer to home. Mm-hmm. So I relocated. I came back. And then I worked in the region. But when she, in 2014, it was around 2014 when she was diagnosed, I decided, I'm going to quit my career in the United Nations. And I never thought I would do something like that, being a career-minded workaholic. But I did. So it's been 9 years, Lori, and it's counting. Over the years, my mother has become my best friend now. She's my very best friend. And it's such a beautiful feeling to have your mother as your best friend. Mm-hmm. And we're together 24/7. And I, for the most part, have this beautiful relationship with her, which I realize now that I needed that relationship. I need this relationship. So, yeah.
That's neat. Now, prior to dementia, like growing up, were you and your mom close? Because sometimes people go, no, we were like oil and water, and
Correct.
what
Yeah.
was your relationship with your mom prior?
I think, again, I have a patchy relationship physically and also emotionally with my mother. Patchy because I was born in Singapore and then lived with my family in Malaysia. And then at the age of 6, I decided I was going to live with my grandparents in Singapore.
Okay.
So I went to school, elementary school in Singapore. And it was only when I was 12, 13 that I returned to Malaysia, went to high school, and resumed, my relationship with my family. And that that brought back the missing my mother during the time when I was in Singapore. So I made it up during my time in Malaysia immediately after return. But then I went to the US to do my undergraduate. And you kind of, get exposed to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that feeling that, wow, I can take on the world. I don't need anybody because I'm this strong, resilient, independent woman. And that kind of have that clash because, sometimes we go different paths. Mm-hmm. And you look back, you thought, maybe that relationship is not that important for me now. Mm-hmm. It's the relationship with friends, relationship with your colleagues that was important. But I always kept a close relationship with my mother in the sense that wherever I was lucky to have a job that took me around the world. Mm-hmm. So I was stationed in different parts. But I would take the time to keep in touch during holidays, during the weekends. Whenever I get the chance, I would return back to Malaysia and spend time with my family, particularly with my mother. So the relationship was there. Mm-hmm. It heightened at different times. But when the tsunami happened, like I said, when I reflect on that, I thought, I need this relationship. I need that safety that you have with your mother. Mm-hmm. So with that came that relationship, but it was this journey that really brought us closer together.
Okay.
That the trust is there. Yeah.
I totally understand and appreciate that. And I like how you said, well, it's patchy, we were close, we were apart, there's so many different dynamics. And I think sometimes people don't look at all those pieces of their life, with that. And I agree, I got to that point, I think like you, where and I was always really close with my mom, and I lived close too. I was close with both my parents. But the closeness that you develop as the disease progresses is, to me, it's almost like a spiritual level, a spiritual connection. It's not your everyday relationship. I don't think it wasn't for me anyways.
Lori, I absolutely agree, because I think my relationship with my mother has been elevated into friendship, mm-hmm. but even higher than that. And I think, we all have our baggage. Mm-hmm. I had depression and I had breakdowns. Mm-hmm. And I think looking back, I realized, I was confused about what was my purpose. And through this journey and my relationship with my mother, and through my faith, that, this is a divine obligation to care for your mother, particularly, mm-hmm. and your father both, but particularly your mother. And so when you mentioned that spirituality link, I just thought, that is absolutely the way I see it.
Yeah, I term it as different levels of unconditional love that I didn't know existed. before. And it was like, wow, I thought I knew what that was like. And then it was like, whoa, we're at another level. And then it's like, whoa, we're at another level, and one of these days, I'm going to write about that, because I think it surprised me. I didn't know those levels existed, those ways of communicating. And yet the deeper we got, the easier and the simpler life was, even though the disease was more complicated in some ways.
Absolutely. I think, we tend to see the negative of dementia. I don't wish dementia on anybody. If I had a choice, the answer is no. I don't want dementia with my mom or with anybody. But in the midst of dementia, we have to get on with it. And having those kind of awareness that it doesn't have to be all that ugly. There are sparks, there are blessings, and we have to be alert to those, to have that aha moment, like, oh, wow, there's a different level now, and this is happening, and getting excited about those kinds of things. And I think that is what has made me survive this journey. Mm-hmm. And not only survive, I think I'm also thriving.
Yeah. It was funny when you said that, and I haven't thought of this movie in a long time, and I don't know if you ever saw it, the movie Cocoon, where it was about all the older people and they jump in the pool. And I was thinking, yes, it's kind of like the movie Cocoon, where you life is different than what you thought it was, and it's in a lot of ways. And I know there'll be some people out there wanting to just slap me upside the head going, no, Lori. But it can be really freeing if you allow it to be, in a lot of ways, and cut through stresses and burdens, because it makes you prioritize your life different.
I absolutely agree.
Just like with the tsunami. I mean, that was like just boom. I mean, that was a black and white moment for you, a trigger point of, I'm changing my priorities here.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, with your mom, you got her diagnosed in 2014. Can you share some of the symptoms she was having?
Yeah. I think for me, I remember this vividly. I was visiting her, and I remember lying down watching TV, and she was talking on the phone to a friend, and she was talking about a wedding. And she's always been very active and social butterfly. She's got events here and there that, just listening to it tires me. Then she put down the phone and she asked me, did you hear that conversation? What was the date? So I told her the date. And then she sat there, just looked at me blank, and she asked the question again. And I responded, I didn't think much of it. Mm-hmm. And then it happened again. And she says, is that the wedding, or is it the other event? And I thought, So that was one. I thought that was a bit strange. The other, when her sister came to visit, and we dropped her off at the bus station for her to take the bus and return to Singapore. And my aunt thanked me for money in her purse, 300 ringgit. And I said, no, I didn't put the money in there. She said, oh, you're just kidding. I said, no, I'm not kidding. I didn't put money in. No, I didn't give you any money gifts. And she looked at my mom and said, did you give me money? And I could see my mom's face just changed. Mm-hmm. Like, I think she understood that perhaps it was her, and she had no recollection of it. Or maybe at that time she did, but I could see her face just changed. So that was another, I thought, oh, kind of strange. With my mother, her gait changed. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know it then, but, after having more knowledge about dementia, I realized that was also one of the symptoms, that her gait has changed. So and then there were many others, we went for a holiday, and she banged her head. Mm-hmm. I think she tripped and banged on her head. And it was happening more often. And I think that was the coordination also that was taking place. So yeah, those were the things that I thought, it's just something not right with her. So then, going back to knowing some of the symptoms of dementia, that's when we thought, we need to take her and get her assessed.
Wow.
And there was also the depression part.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
And the depression, I know, throws people for a loop, and it throws the doctors for a loop. Over here in the US, most people will still say it takes them 2 to 3 years to get a diagnosis, because the doctors go to the depression first. They go to all the other things. The other thing I just want to mention, because some, us in the field know what gait is, but a lot of other people don't know. And gait really is just how we walk, how we carry ourselves.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it can get unbalanced, it can get stiff. I mean, there's lots of different things that can happen, because every person with dementia is a little bit different. So thank you for sharing those things. I think it's important for people to hear from my different guests what they noticed, because again, everybody's a little bit different and we all notice things differently. I loved when you said, about the money, when you saw in your mom's face things had changed. And I think that's actually one of the gifts that dementia teaches us, is to pay more attention to that kind of multi-sensory interaction. It's not just about the words, but we're looking at the eyes and the mouth and the gestures and the drop of the mouth going,
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I take very good notes about the changes in my mother. Sometimes I think when we went to the doctor kind of not happy with me because I give too many notes. And what happens also, I pass on the notes to them earlier, because I don't think it's giving my mom respect to talk about her in her presence as if she's not there. I think, we talk about dignity a lot, but when we come to the question, what does dignity look like to you? We kind of stumble. For me, these are the kinds of things when we show dignity to the person. You don't talk about the person in their presence as if they're not there. So that's why I take good notes, but also because I'm curious about the changes.
Well, and I think it's good. I don't know about your medical system, but in ours, it's like you got 15 minutes and you're in and out of there. And so if you get those notes to them ahead of time, I know a lot of times people will bring them in and then the doctor doesn't have time and the nurse doesn't have time. But I found here in the States, the way we're set up, find out who the doctor's nurse is, befriend her, and get those notes to her. And nowadays we can do a lot of stuff online, and let them have the time to review it. Or a lot of times the nurse will review it and she'll just kind of highlight it. So you can make those comments, like if you're having difficulty with driving, you can give them the background and say, but don't say we said it, because we're the bad guy enough,
Absolutely. Yes.
To preserve this relationship. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a really, really key point. Now, in your, navigation of your journey, as a full-time care partner to your mom, what were the most challenging things that you've had to deal with so far?
Oh my gosh, that's a really tough question, because I sit down, I wonder, what is really, really tough. For me, I think seeing that fear in her eyes, it tells me, deep down that there's something really not right, and she's aware of it. And that's painful, because sometimes things can happen and, there's apathy and it seems like she's not aware of it. But when I see that fear in her eyes, I know she feels it. And then, sort of the questions like, who am I? My mom is still verbal. She can still communicate. So she will be able to say, I don't know what time it is. And who am I? I'm just following you. And that's painful. So I think that's really challenging for me. And then, there are a million other things that are challenging, but the core of it is seeing that fear in her eyes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And for myself, and I don't know if you found this, but I found what was challenging for me was depending on what state of mind I was in or how much time I had too. Because sometimes I could deal with the repeating of questions, but if I had a big to-do list and I'm really multitasking or we're trying to get out the door, sometimes I wasn't as gracious of a daughter as she deserved, in those moments. And man, it's hard not to beat yourself up, at those times.
Absolutely. And I think, I completely agree with you, Lori, and thank you for bringing that up. Because I think sometimes people who are not in our shoes, they don't get it. And you get judged.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't understand that this is an extremely challenging, difficult situation we're in. We are doing our very best. And we're human beings. Mm-hmm. And we make mistakes. And we have our ups and downs. Give us a break.
Yep. I'm going to just tell just a really beautiful story that happened to a friend of mine. She had gone to the grocery store and she was trying to check out and they wouldn't take her check, went through like the little scanner thing and it kicked it back. And she knew the check was good, but they weren't going to do anything. So she was really frustrated. She's recently lost her husband and she's just grieving bad. And at times, she'll get confused. And she had to leave, her groceries and then go to the bank to get money and then come back to pay for her groceries. When she came back, and I thought, oh, why aren't there more people like this in the world? The woman that was behind her went and bought her a bouquet of flowers and just to calm her down and just to say life will be okay. And I'm like, we need more compassion to realize what others are going through.
Absolutely. And I love that story because I wrote an article on hope in the midst of dementia. And it was about the people, strangers, who have gone out of their way to be kind to me and my mother. And I just thought, we're going to be okay because despite all these challenges, and life can be sometimes very difficult, there are people out there who, for me, it's not coincidence. There is a higher being that has put everything in place because God knows this is challenging. God knows this is difficult, and God has put us in this position, and God's going to give us the tools and people who are going to surround us. And those moments that you think that, I'm going to break down, I can't do this, particularly like, the story of the woman. And I have had times when I'm outside and I just broke down and cried. Mm-hmm. And so, when you come with people who see that and don't judge you and be kind to you, you think, I'm going to be okay.
Yep.
It's all good.
Well, you want to fit in. And I think sometimes with dementia, we all feel abnormal. Like we're a square peg trying to get pushed into a round hole. And you don't feel like you fit in, and neither does a person with dementia. And it doesn't have to be like that. We can all be kinder and less judgmental if we choose to be. But I think that doesn't happen unless people slow down in their life and really appreciate people on that human level. We're all equals here, and we're all going through different things at different times. Now, you had mentioned your article on hope, which I love because I'm all about, one of the things that got me into this was I was tired of the fear mentality, marketing through fear, and I wanted to market through hope. I wanted to ease the burden instead of add to it, So even like with your title of hope, how did people respond to that?
To the article or to this by?
To the article and talking about hope,
Yeah. That article got a lot of good reviews, and particularly among friends who really appreciated it. When you live with somebody with dementia, you slowly begin to have circle of friends and support system of people who have the same lived experiences you do. Mm-hmm. And they also appreciate that even more. So yeah, I mean, I was glad I took the time to write that article and to honor those people who have touched me and who has shown dignity to my mom. So I wanted to give it back to the community. And that's what prompted me to write. And I think, people appreciated that despite me being a 24/7 care partner to my mother, it's been going on for 9 years. The isolation, the lost opportunities, and the stigma, and all the ugly stuff related to dementia, I'm still hopeful. And I have to thank my mother for that, because, she shows symptoms of advanced stage dementia. Mm-hmm. But, she's different, but she's still, she's the same person, but she's different. And I see that the having that zest for life, the person that she was before, and she still shows some of that now, and wanting to be independent, still wanting to try things. And to me, that's resilience, and that's hope. If she is fighting, and I see that every single day, I thought, I need some of those. I need to live with hope, because my mother is showing me that. And to me, that's a huge blessing. That's a huge gift that dementia has given us. And you're right, Lori. We need to look at dementia in a different way. Mm-hmm. To enjoy those kinds of moments, those kinds of perspectives.
Yeah, because they do exist. And I mean, your mom was still leading by example in a different way. But again, if you're not open-minded to look for those things, to believe that she still has the personhood that can contribute to your life, and you just kind of blow it off, you're going to miss all that,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you have a diagnosis like this, right, in the family, particularly your loved one, grief and devastation kicks in, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get confused. I was confused for the first 2 years. I was dealing with grief. I had no idea what was going on. Basically, all the information that was given to me was all the negatives about dementia. So basically, I took the decisions for my mother. And these are, the regret that I have is 2 years of taking over her life. And what changed for me, Lori, was a time when we were in the doctor's office. And, going to see a doctor for my mom, and I would like an outing, mm-hmm. make the most of it. And, for many people with dementia, when they see the doctor, they are this lively social butterfly, right? And so she was having this great relationship with the doctor until the topic of medication came up. She was livid. She just turned into somebody I didn't know. And she made it very, very clear she didn't want to go on with dementia medication. That was the turning point for me, because I looked at this woman. I thought, oh my gosh, what have I been missing? She is first and foremost a person. This person can make decisions for herself. This person happens to be my mother. who happens to live with dementia. Whereas in the first 2 years, it was all about dementia. It was all about the losses. And I think that moment, 2016, that was also the year I was introduced to Teepa's No Positive Approach to Care. And I watched her videos and I started practicing and I got into it and I practiced it on my mom. I thought, ooh, this makes a lot of sense. And the foundation of PAC is all about relationship. It's about seeing the perspective of the other person. And I think that's where the empathy comes in. It's about self-awareness. Like you said, Lori, when the biggest challenge for you is your state of mind, right? And the same thing with PAC, where it looks at what the person can still do instead of the losses. And instead of looking at the stages, the deterioration scale, Teepa came out with the GEMS state model, which looks at, the person is precious, looks at what that really is around for me. And you're right. When I'm about to manage my mom or to start a relationship with my mom, just a quick example, taking a shower is challenging. If I'm not ready for it, I'm not going to even try and attempt to take her into the shower because I knew it's not going to end well. So I don't set the stage for failure. I just wait until I'm calm and ready to do something I know could be challenging. And then I see my mom's state of, in the moment. And then we go ahead and translate that into individual responses in the moment. I think that has really, really helped me navigate this journey.
Well, and you probably became more aware that your state of mind is going to affect her state of mind, where they mirror things back. So if you're anxious,
absolutely,
you're going to be anxious. And most of us don't know that. We don't consciously think of that. But that goes way past dementia. That's with everybody. I mean, we've all been in a meeting where somebody walks in the room and we're all like, oh, and everything changes because one person walked in the room. The whole team was getting along, and then that one person came in, or family situation or whatever it is. And so it really does have a big impact. How about meaningful moments? Are there one or two that just really stand out that just like melted your heart with your mom?
Oh, yes. I was sitting with my mother on the balcony. We lived in a 10th floor apartment building on the 10th floor. She was kind of not so alert. She didn't know who I was then. So she was telling me about relationship between a mother and daughter. And she was going on and about it. I mean, she held that conversation for about 20, 30 minutes, talking about how a daughter has to relate to her mother. So, I would prompt her with questions. There were many things that she told me. That one thing that stood out in that conversation about daughter-mother relationship was she said, you need to treat your mother like your friend. And she's talking very slowly, very articulate. I waited 54 years of my life to hear that. That I will never forget. And all I wanted to do, Lori, was cry. But in that situation, you can't. Because, I'm thinking about my mother, what she would think if, I am crying. But my heart just melted. And I just, thank God for having that conversation with my mother. And so, that was a beautiful moment for me.
Oh, that is very, very neat. If you just tuned in, we have been talking with Sharifah Tahir, and it's just been a fascinating conversation. She lives over in Malaysia, and she is caring for her mother full time and has been doing so since 2014. And she just has this really wonderful attitude and insight. So if you're just popping in now, you're going to want to go back to the beginning, and we're going to carry on and learn more about her life, how she's been affected, and her advocacy work. So if you decide you want to reach out to her, she will be having a new website coming out. I know that always takes longer than you think. It took me, oh gosh, forever to update my site, which will be called Uniquely Me Initiatives. But you can get a hold of her by her name at gmail.com. I want to talk about, how do you think your care partner journey has affected you as a person?
Wow. This has been a life-changing experience. One from devastation and mixed feelings to becoming a pretty successful care partner, and the first Malaysian to be a Teepa Snow positive approach to care, advanced consultant and trainer certified, and becoming an advocate for persons living with dementia, for care partners, and persons with disability. I think, this journey has given me a sense of purpose. I was looking for it, as I mentioned earlier, and that sense of purpose started, I recognized it along this journey by serving my mother in the context of spirituality. Mm-hmm. And it has now overflowed into serving others in the context of humanity. Mm-hmm. I think we have been talking about this, Lori, about self-awareness. What has happened is my self-awareness has really heightened by this journey. Sometimes I feel like, I've gone outside of my body and seeing everything that's going on. I'm so alert about where I am, what I'm doing, how I'm feeling, how I'm affecting my mother and affecting others. It's a great feeling. At the same time, it also can be pretty scary because you're just so aware. But at the same time, being able to compartmentalize those feelings and being able to process them. Mm-hmm. And through this, I have found me, and I like the person that I've become. Yes, that there are many changes I need to do every single day. There could be improvement in who the person I am. But, I found who Sharifah is, and I know my purpose, and I'm able to, because of that, to identify and stick to my priorities. And to say, no, I don't want to do that because it doesn't fit into my priority. And being able to say, I'm sorry, but the answer is no. And being able to, without guilt, setting boundaries. And I think that's really important. I had issues with setting boundaries before. I think that has happened. And one of the things I realized that this journey is difficult, but it doesn't have to be that difficult because of my cognitive reframing. Mm-hmm. People say to me, oh, Sharifah, it's so nice of you. You put your life on hold for your mother. I'm not putting my life on hold. This is my life. I've chosen this life. And I think if I put my life on hold, there's going to be a lot of resentment and anger. But, this is a life. I chose this life. I found purpose. I found me. So I think this is what the care partnering and living with somebody with dementia and having that intense relationship with my mother has made me the person I am today.
I love when you said putting your life on hold creates that anger and angst. And there's a lot of people out there dealing, caring for somebody with dementia or another chronic illness that feel exactly that way. And you can hear it in their tone of voice. To me, I've never heard anybody say it that way. I love the way you phrased, you don't look at yourself as putting your life on hold because that creates that sense of resentment. and anger that builds up. I think it was beautiful that you said, this is my choice, this is my life, this is where I want to be, this gives me purpose. And you found yourself. I can totally relate to that. I mean, I had a great career selling residential real estate, and I never thought that I would leave it. And I chose to just kind of turn the switch and jump into here. And after 2 weeks, people are like, well, don't you miss it? Don't you miss it? I said, it's like I was never there. I miss my friends. I miss the people, but I don't miss my life in real estate. And I adored my job. I mean, I absolutely loved my job, but this is like it's like a next level thing. And that happened in less than 2 weeks. It was amazing to me.
Yeah. I could so relate to that too, because, I think partly that is our human resilience. Mm-hmm. We adapt and we get on with life.
Hey everybody, Jared Sebesti here, host of Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. Few people could just flip the switch from working a career 30 or 40 plus years, retiring on Friday without methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. To listen now, search Retire Repurposed on your favorite podcast platform, Senior Resource, or Life Audio.